Right, we're at a stage politically now in the UK where we're getting more divided. It's been this way for a while. There's been political agendas that have been pushed that are anti-immigration for a long time. It's always been an argument to suggest that there's job theft, there's all sorts of things. In 1918, there was a riot in Cardiff about this exact thing. Men were coming back from the Second World War, coming back to the docks and finding out that their jobs were already taken by people from the Commonwealth or from elsewhere. They perceived to be immigrants, so Irish people, people from, yeah, again, the Commonwealth, all over, that were working in the jobs they were working in beforehand for lesser pay. That caused a race riot in 1918 Cardiff, and it was put down by the police. But the initial wave of that, and it's maybe you could argue where this stigma is kind of built off, certainly in Wales, and you do hear it elsewhere across the world, that immigrants are coming in to countries, undercutting and stealing jobs from the people that are native from that area or perceived to be more native than these migrants. So what's interesting as well is that Irish people in the UK were the biggest migrant group, but you very rarely, at least in this day and age, hear about anti-Irish stigma. That kind of started to phase out after the Second World War because Irish people, or certainly were perceived to be more similar, and culturally they are more similar to traditional British, like Anglo-Saxon or whatever you want to call it, British folk that are considered racially British, right? Whatever that's supposed to mean. So what you then get is an increase in people that being like, say, Caribbean, anti-Indian, anti-Pakistani, anti-Middle Eastern, anti-Polish, anti-whatever it might be. And another good example of this would be the Notting Hill riots. Oswald Mosley, someone you're probably aware of if you studied history, but if you're not, he was a political leader in the United Kingdom, kind of known for flip-flopping, slightly all over the place. Fought in the First World War and was so unbelievably scarred by that experience that he tried in a warped way to stand up for the working man, for the individual, for the kind of the small people, if you want to put it that way, in very different ways. He tried to start a fascist movement at one point, was part of the Labour Party at another, tried to start a pseudo-communist party at another point. So he's all over the political spectrum, but the one thing he really didn't want was war. Now, for some reason, later on in his life, and people would argue that maybe he wasn't sound of mind or whatever it might be, he decided to basically get together a group of people in the Notting Hill area to basically try and push out the people that come from the Commonwealth, that, by the way, were invited by the British government to help rebuild the United Kingdom following the Second World War, following the Blitz, and following the economic kind of, well, turmoil the country was in, and hope to kind of supposedly like well, just make the struggle slightly less hard, more manpower, more people working, stimulating the economy, all that kind of good stuff. So 100,000 people moved in and around the Notting Hill area following that. And within those following years, Oswald Mosley started to kind of saber rattle a little bit, and eventually the Notting Hill riots began. Many people were injured, a few were killed, and loads of people were arrested on both sides of the riot, both on the, what you'd maybe call these days, like white supremacist or maybe that's too far, but like the certainly anti-immigration side, and then those who were also white and defending those migrants, or all that kind of stuff. And this is where you get this rhetoric now, more coming to shape of the powers that be kind of trying to use the small people to argue among themselves and forget about the big picture, right? What do most of those people have in common that were fighting down the bottom there? Take race out the picture for a second, because there were a lot of white people on the side of the Windrush generation and those people that are getting attacked from Caribbean descent. There were less people of migrant backgrounds that would have been defending those who were pushing them out, naturally, because it would be a bit strange to, in that case, shoot yourself in the foot, right? What do they both have in common, though? Well, they're both from economically downtrodden environments, right? And a political leader, in that case Oswald Mosley, for power potentially, or you could say maybe he was doing it for his version of the greater good, whatever it is, has manipulated people, or guided people, if you want to be less cynical, into race rioting. into basically fighting amongst yourselves and not getting to the actual problem that was in place, which was the economy, which is why people were brought over to help re-stimulate it, help to grow it, and help to rebuild the country after the Second World War. So again, it's a distraction, and we're seeing that again in this day and age. The Reform Party. To be honest, is it like a truly awful thing? Personally, not a huge fan of it, but it's not awful. If you vote for it in Wales or Scotland, you're an idiot. Like, let's just put that out there, because they're not going to do anything for Wales or Scotland at all. And if you do vote for them in those situations, and that is your genuine vote, please do more research beforehand. And if that is genuine, like you're the best vote you think you can make, that's best for yourself, everyone around you, then you know what, you've come to a reasoned decision as an adult to do so. Again, that's your prerogative at the end of the day, right? But it feels like they are again missing the point. The problem with the UK right now, certainly, and has been since lockdown, has been the economy primarily. And these days we're getting sidetracked again. People are trying to get on the trans agenda, on migration and all these things, and maybe migration is a problem. Let's be real here, like illegal immigration is always the kind of parapet that's used by people on the right to say that they don't want just general migration, to be honest. It's always one like, oh, illegal immigrants shouldn't be in this country. Well, like, yeah, okay. That's not a hugely controversial take. I mean, you know, there are obviously circumstances and ways you have to analyse it that are different, but, you know, that's not a hugely consequential thing. It's when people are dog whistling and doing other things, getting distracted from the actual genuine problems. Now, you can look at statistics, and obviously there always will be crime statistics and, like, say, statistics of certain rises in certain trends. Say, for example, there was one recently that you see a lot nowadays with, like, Birmingham. And the Birmingham population of people from East Asian or Muslim backgrounds has grown massively since the 80s. And people have said, oh, but Birmingham's got so much, like, dirtier and messier and all this stuff. And, well, yeah, that might be the case. Statistically, it is the case. But if you're looking at that purely just off the migration background, one, you might have a point. Like, genuinely, there might be a point there. There are other factors, i.e. the city has grown massively since then as well. You also have to consider the fact that consumerism has taken a hold very differently to how it was in the 80s, and there's more rubbish around now as well, right? You also got to consider the Birmingham Council right now is broke. Like, it is not in a healthy financial situation. So as a result as well, like, cleaning up and stuff done by the city, by the council, is again more difficult for them to do. There's so many other factors to it, and you're taking your mind off it, and people are becoming troglodytes again, and trying to fight over race. And, you know, like, gender and sexuality and all this stuff, like, that doesn't matter at the end of the day. Right? So, if your solution is, and again, you genuinely think this, the solution to saving the UK, saving Europe, whatever your thing is to kick out every single migrant that's come across, one, that's impossible to do, let's be real. That's impossible to do. You're living pie-in-the-sky delusional shit, right? And the other thing is, you're negating the fact that a lot of people that come into this country do great things, right? We've also got so far off topic, we've got so far removed that we're fighting over stuff like this, right? There are billionaires out there, there are people in extreme positions of power that are able to get away with everything, right? That, you know, if they'd actually properly pay taxes, or if they were taxed correctly, which right now is not possible, because, again, the government is not able to do it. If we're being honest, the government just isn't able to do it, because if they do start trying to tax the billionaires, then all those billionaires are going to just start lobbying. They're going to pull out their money from certain projects. They're going to act and throw their toys out the pram, and that's the best way they can do it. Because it's a capitalist system, and they're so ingrained in it now that the system actually relies on them, not the other way around. A political system, that is, not the economic system. And so at this point, there are billionaires that are genuinely not above the law, but they are almost untouchable in certain ways because they are so powerful with their finances, and they can say, oh right, you're going to do us over, oh, in which case we're going to go elsewhere, and you're going to lose out, and your country's finances, which are already in a horrible state, are just going to get worse. And it's a perpetuating cycle that is only going to get worse with time. If people don't, like, you know, if there isn't a big movement soon at least, there will be a bigger problem. More people will fall into poverty. Not sure about England, because frankly England's not something that's really a concern. But in Wales, a lot of children are growing up in poverty now, and Westminster will still refuse to admit that, right? But the statistics are loud and clear in Wales. There's something like 4% of children, which sounds like not a lot, but that's 4 in 100. 1 in 25 kids is growing up in poverty in Wales, right? That means 1 in every class, 1 kid in every class is living in poverty. And that's the extreme. So if you're taking out poverty, if you're just considering the fact that there's a lot of kids that will be in school that won't necessarily be in the poverty band, but they'll be in and around it. You know, one, if their parent gets laid off, or, you know, you don't know the financial situation at home, it might be a single mum with 3 kids, you never know. And so all these situations are getting exacerbated, but people would rather talk about, Muslims are the problem. And you'll see these videos of people, and it's like Ramadan's just finished. You know, down to anyone that's completed that. But you hear about these people like, oh, look at this country, it's fallen off. And it's just people praying, and it's people acting, you know, honorably in a religious fashion. And it's just, we're getting distracted. And people would rather fight over, you know, pots and pans than actually, you know, kind of just looking a little bit higher and considering the fact that maybe, just maybe, the people that are at the bottom with you aren't the problem. It's the people upstairs dropping their crap on you that are the problem. But, you know, maybe that's too serious. But yeah, thanks for watching. Bit of a rant. Tried not to make it too Wales specific, even though that's the only real part that's actually cared about, to be honest. Like England, Westminster, they don't care. Everyone knows that at this point. But this is universal. There is a universal thing across the UK where this is a problem. And this probably applies to your country as well if you're not from the UK. But, yeah, it's a difficult one because the relationship between capitalism and the relationship between parliaments and governments is just so interwoven at this point. I mean, you know, people back in the day, it was the church and the government that were really intertwined, and these days it's just business people, that are, you know, affluent and got massive influence over whole governments and effectively controlling countries. You know, if you look at the biggest country in the world, arguably the most powerful one right now, and you look at, you know, some dude from South Africa is kind of, you know, you could argue, doing a little puppetry over there too. So, yeah. Well, that's that, isn't it? Thanks for watching. Sorry if this, you know, was a bit extreme, a bit too close to home, a bit too serious, but, shall be getting back on with, some just different stuff again soon. Less political stuff, more just, live stuff. But yeah, cheers. Thanks for watching. What's that? Cheers.